As I went out the door, I passed a picture of Charles Roach and I waved at him and I said, I'm going to go to a tribute for Peter Rosenthal. And he smiled. I had the good fortune to accidentally meet Peter in November of 1967 at a University of Toronto demonstration, students against Dow Chemical who were helping produce napalm, so naturally Peter and I were there. We bumped into each other. We were kindred spirits, being socialists, opposing colonialism, racism, and class oppression, and the mad notion of American exceptionalism, and we became, therefore, fast friends. Through our friendship, I came to know Peter's family in New York, his wonderful parents and brothers. Pete's mom was a very perceptive political thinker and activist. His dad was a sweet man who wore his heart on his sleeve and always raised interesting questions. They were veterans of struggles for many great causes. You could study their lives and learn much about modern history. They were generous people and fun to be around. And I met Peter's maternal grandmother in New York, and Wally took me to visit her. She was in her apartment alone, and she was blind, and she was reading Tolstoy in Braille. And I said, Phil, you better wake up. This woman is something to emulate. She told Wally and I the story of she was in Russia at the time of the fall of the Tsar. And her father said, well, that's it. The revolution is over. And she and her brother said, no, we have to have a government of workers and peasants. And getting back to Toronto, I said to Peter, you know something, you're a third generation Bolshevik. That's a heavy responsibility. And I was joking, half joking. Two quick matters to mention. Most of you know the almost legendary story of how Peter stood on the planter to speak against the Vietnam War and was arrested and went off to become a remarkable lawyer. A detail that I find interesting to take you by. Standing nearby was a small, slender young woman in torn Levi's who regularly attended our demonstrations. She wrote a short, smart, and amusing poem talking about Peter by name and the policeman by name, and it was published in a popular anti-war paper. That was Paulette Giles, now a widely acclaimed novelist, poet, and her latest book, News of the World, was made into a movie with Tom Hanks. Of all things, she lives on a ranch near Utopia, Texas. I suggest we look around and find her Rosenthal poem. It's a very good poem. Second, Peter had a lifelong interest in the Rosenberg case that became a hammer of the McCarthyites to break up the progressive causes, all progressive causes, to this day. We talked about it often and shared details of our research. Peter he worked hard at this, Morton Sobel, a co-accused with Ethel and Julius Rosenberg, and who had pulled a long stretch on Alcatraz. And the two of us interviewed Morton Sobel on CIUT. That's in the archives, and I think people should be very interested. It was a passion of Peter's. And we also spent time with him in New York. Sobel was so pleased with Peter and trusted him that he sent him his personal files. Somewhere among Peter's papers, I assume, can be found that rather important historical material. The last time I saw Peter's father, I was leaving their family home, and he was sitting alone, taking in the sun. He was in a very fragile condition. He waved to me, looked at me very directly, and said, give me your honest opinion. Do you think there'll ever be socialism in America? And I said, yes, provided we don't run out of Rosenthals.